Business leaders everywhere are embracing data-driven metrics to make key decisions. Senior leaders are asking their team to define key performance indicators, or what's known as KPIs, and they're using a host of different types of dashboards to track, measure, and monitor the health of the business. For some leaders, this makes a lot of sense, right? We've been doing this for a while. For others, it sounds like you're speaking a foreign language. Implementing data-driven metrics is no longer an option. This is the new normal. No leader is going to survive without data. If you or maybe somebody in your team is struggling to embrace data, maybe you're struggling to get your head around KPIs, don't worry. I'm going to simplify this for you. Today, I want to help you and your team become more data-driven. And I want to help you understand why that's even important in the first place. I'm going to share with you 2 ways to look at data to drive the performance of your business. And before I do that, I want to invite you to join my next 14-day Move the Needle challenge, where I'll help you or maybe even somebody on your team unlock the logjam that typically stands in the way of making progress. Together in 14 days, we'll create a plan, we'll jumpstart results, and we'll put the habits and tools in place to sustain momentum. If you're interested, follow the link in the description. Okay, right now, let's talk about getting your team to use data to make decisions about the business. As with any cultural transformation, the frontline leaders are the critical agents of change. And when the topic of data-driven metrics emerge, most of the current conversations are quickly focused on the role of technology. But I gotta tell you, the successful companies I work with, they already have the technology aspect of this initiative in motion. The challenge that I witness and see all the time is that the leaders at every level are struggling to embrace data. Right? Intellectually they get it. The idea of using data to drive decisions makes a ton of sense. The specific challenge, though, is not the idea of data-driven metrics. It is instead the implementation of that idea in such a way that it becomes embedded in the culture of the organization. Let me give an example. Before COVID, many leaders would request additional resources based upon their team's workload. When someone on our team started complaining they didn't have enough resources, a leader would then raise it upwards and say, hey, we need to get more headcount in here. We need to add, offload certain people. Well, I gotta tell you, the days of lobbying for resources are over. Leaders are being asked to justify their decisions about resources based upon data-driven metrics. If you as a leader, if you want more resources, you know what? You're gonna have to present a business case that's based upon data that clearly identifies the ROI of adding additional headcount, and then specifically where the headcount is going to be used, and then how that additional headcount is going to increase your team's performance. This is just one of many examples. Data-driven metrics are not only being used to track, measure, and monitor the performance of their business, they're also being used to take the emotion out of making decisions. Again, intellectually, we all understand this. The challenge, though, is embedding this in the culture of every leader at every level. Let me continue to unpack this further. The most seasoned leaders not only use data to measure performance, but they also understand how to interpret that data. They understand what that data is telling them, and they begin to draw concrete conclusions from the data. They consistently use data to make adjustments that are going to fine-tune aspects of the business that are going to fuel growth. Conversely, there are many mid-level managers who may have data-driven metrics in place, but you know what? They have no clue on how to interpret the data to make decisions that are going to impact the success of their team before it's too late. And lastly, there are a lot of frontline leaders, if we're really being honest, who don't even fully understand what data they should be measuring in the first place. Let me give you some advice. There are 2 sides of this discussion that are equally important. First is the data itself. Every leader at every level needs to have KPIs in place. Why? To measure the performance of their team. Most businesses have KPIs at the company level, and what they do is they roll them down to their team. The challenge is that a KPI at a company level rarely has any meaning to someone 2 or 3 levels down. And if you're just pushing that KPI down, right, it's not a formula for success. Instead, a leader needs to take that KPI that's been given to them and they need to break it down further. How does your team going to contribute to the company's KPI, right? How are you going to determine as a leader if your team's even performing well or not? How are you going to measure your team's performance? How are you going to measure their productivity? How are you going to measure results? That's the data you need to get your arms around. But again, data itself is just half the equation. Don't fall into the trap of just reporting numbers. Because let me tell you something, right? It's really important. No one cares about the numbers. Yeah, right. You heard that right. See, data is important, but the value is not in the data. The value is in the interpretation of the data. As a leader, you must take the time to understand what that data is telling you. Does the data illustrate that you're trending in the right direction, right? If not, what could you do to course correct before it's too late? What would you do differently? What would you start doing? What would you stop doing? What would you experiment with? What else could you measure or monitor that could be a leading indicator of anticipated success or could anticipate a problem faster? Let me give you a couple of examples because I think sometimes examples illuminate this for us. As a sales leader, I've been in sales my entire career, right? Revenue is an important data metric. Makes a ton of sense, right? When I was in corporate America, I got measured on revenue. In fact, I got paid on my team's revenue contribution. It was the KPI my boss used to track my performance. But if you ask anybody who ever worked for me, you know what? I didn't give a shit about revenue. I cared about bookings. Bookings were my sleep at night pill. Bookings were my leading indicator of revenue. If my team's bookings were down, I knew that in about 3 months, guess what? My revenue would also be down. See, too many sales leaders fall into the false sense of security when they look at their numbers and they had a great month. They're like, oh my God, it's great. And they wake up one day and they realize, uh-oh, we got problems. See, while the KPI that was handed down to me was revenue, the KPI that I tracked for my team was bookings. I would also look at things like year-over-year bookings. Why? To spot trends. I would look at things like product mix, average sale, install base growth, net new clients. I mean, the list is endless, right? Let me give you another example. Let's say you're in services, right? If so, you might want to measure backlog, and then you might want to peel that further and say, okay, is that backlog is even scheduled or not? You might want to look at utilization. You might want to look at things like billable hours, gross profit. However, those are just, again, data points. I've seen too many service leaders brag about the utilization numbers. They go, hey, great news, the team is 90% utilized, but then you look at the gross profit, it's only 2%. What does that mean? That means the services is running over budget, which then begs the question, why? Is the team taking too long to implement? Was the project even scoped right in the first place? See, it's the color commentary that's the most valuable. Data is important, but the value is not in the data. The value is in your interpretation of the data. Anybody who's ever worked with my team, you know that we focus on developing leaders who develop leadership. That's our tagline. This is the essence of what I'm talking about here. See, right, as a leader, you have to use data to measure the performance of your business. But you also have to know how to interpret the data, and that's where the real leadership comes in. It's important that every leader at every level take the time to help their team use data to make decisions and then understand those areas they can tweak, increase the performance and productivity of their team. If you want to learn more about increasing performance and productivity, like some of the things I shared today, I invite you or maybe anybody on your team to register for our next Move the Needle Challenge. And I'll help you unlock the logjam of other challenges that you or your team face so you can in fact move the needle forward. It doesn't matter where you are, right? It doesn't matter what you've done, if we're honest. It doesn't matter what you failed to do. Today, like every day, is a new beginning. You have an opportunity right here, right now, to begin to make a renewed commitment to moving the needle forward on your business. If this is interesting to you, the link's in the description. Check it out. Okay, if you like what I shared today, if you got some kind of a perspective that you want to share with your team, do me a favor. Give it a like, share a comment below that's related to your business, and of course, subscribe. Because each week, I'm sharing content that's going to help you lead yourself, it's going to help you lead your team, or it's going to help you scale your business. We'll talk to you soon.